Welcome to the Back to Birth workshop for helping professionals. This is a masterclass on imprints for those who serve others. So I'm going to start with a story about a little girl named Melissa. And I want you to just listen because the way that we come into the world shows up over and over again in our everyday lives. First, we need to see it. Then we can help others to see it too. Start with yourself, then think about others. So let's get started on seeing what we're talking about. I'll never forget the family who came to see me about their 3-year-old daughter, Melissa. I'm reading from my book, It's Never Too Late to Heal. This little one never seemed to stop moving or talking. Super sweet, very smart. They loved her more than anything. Yet she didn't sleep long at night or during the day. She was in constant motion, and her parents were simply exhausted. Of course, what I do is I ask about her birth. What was her birth like? Her birth had been traumatic for the whole family and very far from the gentle home birth they had planned. Melissa was stuck in the birth canal for many hours before she was finally delivered by C-section. After Melissa was born, she didn't settle easily. She struggled to fall asleep and stay asleep. Breastfeeding was intensely challenging, and she cried all the time. Her parents were super responsive, holding her and doing their best to stay regulated themselves. And somehow they had made it through the first couple of years with her in nearly constant contact with their bodies. She was growing well and was a voracious learner, able to string complex thoughts and ideas together. She just didn't stop moving or talking. Even in the short time we were in the session together, just to observe her, I was feeling tired from the constant hum of her speech and movements, which reminded me of a hummingbird. It felt like the tempo was set too fast in her body and nervous system from her birth, and I became curious about what would shift if we gave her the space to show her story and be in connection with her parents in the process. So I will finish this story, but I just wanted to get you started. Already you can hear this is a little girl who maybe we would diagnose with ADD, the constant movement, ADHD, hyperactivity. There's lots of labels that we might give this child. But as you'll see, as I continue with the story in a little bit, it all shifts when we give her the space to show the story. So the shape of today, we're going to be talking about what is an imprint, the sequence of birth and transitions, the brain stoplight, window of presence, noticing your own patterns first, which we just talked on. We're going to talk about it again, scope of practice and referrals, and workshop. I want you just to take a moment. I want you to look at the picture. What do you see in the picture there? Is there a shape? Because you might look at it at first and think, oh, there's colors and oh, there's something happening there, but I don't really know what it is. And maybe your eyes settle on one spot, and then maybe a shape becomes clear. And I have my own ideas about what I see. But the idea of birth imprints, especially for practitioners, is seeing not just the first thing and making an assumption, but being curious. What is showing up? What else is there? So I'm Rebecca Thompson Hitt. For 30 years, I've walked alongside people finding their way back into relationship with their children, with their clients, and with themselves. I trained for years with Ray Castellino in pre and perinatal somatic psychology, and I'm still learning. I'm not going to hand you a technique, but I'm going to offer you a way of seeing that you'll be able to grow into, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, what is an imprint? Our earliest experiences from conception, pregnancy, birth, and the first days leave a pattern in the body and the nervous system. So, this pattern repeats over and over in plain sight without you understanding what you're seeing. So, we make up stories to make it make sense. It's not a flaw, it's not something you did wrong, it's a pattern that longs to be seen, shared, and received. So when we're talking about Melissa, Her parents had just decided that she was just super high need. And they had an idea that maybe the birth was connected, but they didn't know what to do about it because it had been so hard for all of them. Birth imprints and any early imprint shows up at those transition points that we go through in our day. So, waking up, leaving the house, starting or finishing something, going to bed. These are the biggest ones, but it can show up all the time. It can also show up in our milestones. So, the way that we leave home or don't, the way that we go to kindergarten or don't, or struggle with that transition. It can be what happens when we have a baby. Those patterns repeat over and over and over again. And when we can see them, we can work with them. We can support something different to happen. So you're not broken. It's a pattern. In psychology, we learn to look for the patterns that indicate the brokenness. The DSM is a giant book filled with patterns of how we are broken. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking with curiosity about what happened. And that opens up a different question. What was needed? What was missed then that's still missing now that we can bring in some way? And with Melissa, with that story, we're looking at a family with a small child, but this is just as relevant for you in an adult body. You had your experience of coming into the world, and those patterns are still showing up for you. It works with your adult clients, it works with yourself, it works with kids of any age. The way that you work with it looks different. A family session with a 3-year-old is very different than if you're working with an 18-year-old. You're probably not going to have mom come in and do a birth session unless they have a good relationship. And I have seen that happen. So the other thing that automatically happens is blame. And often it's towards the mother. And this isn't about blame. A smooth, uneventful birth still leaves an imprint because being born is a big experience no matter how well it goes. And you had an experience of it. If you're a parent, your child had an experience of it, and your clients had an experience of it. So come with curiosity, not certainty. Your experience of being born is yours, and it is separate from the experience of one giving birth. So, what this means is that your mother may have a very different story she tells about your birth. Pay attention to what your body's story is showing you. And the same holds for anyone that you work with. Their body story is theirs, and it may differ from the story they or their family have always told about it. And often, when I start asking questions about what was the experience of birth, or what do you know about your birth, many times people start by saying, I don't know anything. And that's okay. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to know the story because your body holds the story. So we just need to create a space for it to show it. So actually, I'm going to back up. And I am going to tell you a little bit more about Melissa and what happened in her story. So slowly, we talked through the birth. At first, only Melissa's parents were in the room with me so that they could share their experience. And then Melissa joined us. And that's really, really important, especially when a birth has been traumatic. The parents absolutely need the opportunity to share what happened to them. So this isn't about, nope, that's not true. It's just the recognition that different stories happened. And if I have a birthing parent and partner in the room, they had two different experiences. There needs to be space for that. And if there is a child in the room, they had a third experience. And if grandma was in the room, she had a different experience. And so there just needs to be room for everybody's experience before we try to give the child the space to show the story. Otherwise, what ends up happening is that the parents hijack the session because they need the space. So when Melissa's parents had had their turn alone, they were able to speak freely about what the experience was like for them. When it was time to share with Melissa, when she joined the session, I encouraged her parents to speak slowly and just share the biggest parts of the story. And there's a whole methodology with this, and I'm going to be doing a workshop if you want to come. I'm going to be modeling a lot of this for you. We spoke slowly about the pregnancy and when it was time for her to be born, using a baby doll to talk about what happened, and then we gave her space to show her story. When children are invited into the story of something that happened that they remember, even if only somatically, they will naturally start showing their own version of the story. Much like if you started talking with a friend about something you shared and they added to the conversation with the part of the story that they remember too. If it is safe enough and you're moving slowly enough, children will begin to show their story. We watched as Melissa repeated the same motions with her body and with the baby doll, crawling into a space under something until her head bumped up against the wall or a chair, and then crawling out the way that she went in. She did this over and over again as we talked about her birth and made space for her to show her story, her experience of what happened. We named what we were seeing and helped her to feel that she wasn't alone right now, as we were experiencing and seeing what had happened for her when she was born. I said, Melissa, I can see that you're crawling under the chair until your head touches the top of the chair. I wonder if you're showing us what it was like when you were ready to be born. Melissa crawled out from under the chair feet first, then crawled under another chair with her head touching the top. This was the position she was in during labor, which we didn't say in her telling of the story. I see that you're doing it again, her mom chimed in. You were trying so hard to find a way out. I can see that. We were both trying so hard to help you be born. There came a point where it felt like Melissa had done what she needed to do, and she crawled into her mother's lap and fell asleep. Her surprised parents both looked up at me and said, She's never done this. She doesn't nap, ever. She never just falls asleep in mom's arms like this. I can't believe this just happened. What was more incredible was the next day when Dad pulled me into the room where she was playing. You have to see this, he said. And there, in the room filled with toys, was Melissa. She was moving slowly around the room in peaceful, contented silence. She wasn't talking and she truly exuded peace. Dad told me that she had wanted to continue showing the story the night before. She'd woken up after sleeping for only an hour. They listened to her and watched her move her body. They named what they were seeing in the same way they had done in the session with me, as she reenacted getting stuck and pushing her head against the headboard of the bed. After that, she once again fell asleep and slept all night for the first time ever. Everyone slept well. So it's making room for the story. It's making space for the connection that couldn't happen then to happen now when you are looking at a family like this. But it's the same thing when you're looking at an individual. What's the connection that was missing then? How can it be met now? So one of my other tools is the brain stoplight. And just very simply, it's cognitive brain, thinking brain, emotional brain, yellow light, and red, survival brain. And when we are looking at imprint stories, we are noticing those places that are green. It's calm, connected, like Melissa and the after when she had completed her story. But before, looking at the spots where she was in overwhelm, where she was running around and moving and talking and not really connecting with anybody, but being able to slow down and moving into that yellow. So the yellow is, yes, it's warning signs, but it's also the fork in the road. This is the place where when we can slow down from that survival place, which is what we're doing when we're doing this work, we're connecting with ourselves and each other in that slower rhythm. It isn't the go, 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 do, do, do brain, the green light. It is the emotional brain where we slow down heart to heart and connect with each other. And we can't do that when we're in survival. So Melissa's story was so much about survival, and they were doing everything they could just to help her get through. And when they were able to slow down, they were able to actually connect. And that's when everything shifted. So our window of presence, we have our overwhelm, too much, and also shut down. This is a super simplified version. I go into this a lot more in my training. But there's a range where we can stay present and connected. Stress can push us past its edges into too much or into shutting down. Our imprints show the story. Rest and awareness widen our window. So, I'm going to show you this piece because this is how we start looking at the idea of imprints. When we're doing anything, if I, and this is my mentor Ray Castellino would always do this. He would take a pillow. He said, anything that we're doing has a sequence. And so we're looking at the sequence. So I'm thinking about picking up this pillow and throwing it. That's the before. That's the intention. The beginning is when I actually put my hand on the pillow. The middle, I'm winding back. The end, letting go of the pillow. The follow through. And then the after, what happens? My hand goes back onto my lap. Birth also has a sequence. It has a before the beginning. It has a beginning where things begin, labor starts, um, or if it's a surgical birth and it's a planned surgical birth, that might be the beginning when the surgeon makes an incision or the prep is happening, the middle, the end, and then the after. So, and it doesn't match up with the phases of birth. If you're familiar with that, it's not the same. It's not, and this is when the cervix is fully dilated, and this is when the head is crowning, and this is when the baby's body is out. It's not those phases. So, and depending upon what's happening in the birth, different things are happening. We have a blueprint. The expectation is that there will be a before the beginning and we'll be preparing to go into labor. And then the beginning, when labor begins on its own, when we're ready. And then the middle, moving down, preparing to leave the body. The ending, when we actually come into the world. And then the after, ideally, is rest and integration. And I wanted to share the shape of the biological expectation, what we expect it to be like. And then what actually happens, we're looking at, well, what happened in the actual birth sequence that we're looking at? And again, we don't have to know what happened. We can start paying attention to, wow, it seems like there's always something that happens here at the end with you. It seems like when you're in college and you're getting to the end of the semester, you're getting to the end of an assignment, you're getting to the end of something happens. So we can also pay attention in present time. What is the story that is showing up in present time? Do we have a rest and integration at the end of something? I know for me and my own birth, it's one of the hardest things for me is to have a rest and integration because in my birth, which was an emergency C-section, I went into labor. And so I had the preparation, the before the beginning, we started, and then somewhere in the middle, we weren't making progress. And after 26 hours of labor, there was a need for a C-section. So then there's a really fast end that I didn't complete, and then immediately went into something else. So that was when, because my mom was knocked out and my dad couldn't be with us, that was when I went to the intensive care unit. And I was by myself for 6 hours until my mom woke up. And so my after becomes another beginning. And um, so that shows up for me when I'm doing a project. And as I get to the end and it feels so hard and I just want somebody else to come and finish it for me. And so I can see it. I happen to know the story, but you don't have to know the story to start paying attention to, wow. I mean, I was in college and I was saying, I seem to have trouble with the end of any process. I will write a letter back in the day when I wrote letters, address the envelope, put the stamp on it, and then not mail it. So I made this observation when I was about 18. So this is a way that I have always been. And that's the clue. But if it's changed recently, that's maybe not an imprint. But if it's the way you've always been, that's your clue. So notice your own patterns in real time. So we can look at Melissa's story and break it down into how it was showing up for her. Then notice what shifted when she had space to show her story. So the constant motion and the excitement in her nervous system is the way that the whole thing metabolized for her. And we can map it. I can map it with what I understand about her birth. But this is the practitioner's real skill. It's not about fixing one part of what happened. It's learning to see the whole shape of the story in relationship to self and to other. And that's where the real repair happens. And this is a picture from one of my workshops. This is in Glastonbury in 2023 with people who were working through their birth imprint stories. So the story shows up because you're redirecting your attention with curiosity rather than I'm trying to make a diagnosis or I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with this person. We're just redirecting our attention to be curious. You don't have to struggle with this. Just pay attention and see what happens. So your practice for this week is to choose one transition, your own, just one. Notice your thinking, your feeling, and your body across the before, the beginning, the middle, the end, and the after. So, as an example, it might be pay attention to when it's time to get ready for bed. What do you do? What do you always do? What does it feel like in your body? Or it might be leaving the house. Or if you're doing something different that you don't normally do all the time, maybe it's going to a new restaurant. Pay attention to what happens when you don't have a preconceived idea of what it's supposed to look like or what you're supposed to do. Writing it down also really helps. And so does having a new person in your space whose different pattern reveals your own. So if you're going someplace new with somebody that you just met, it's a great time to really see your imprints because you'll see theirs and you'll realize that, oh, wait, I don't do it that way. So do this for yourself first. Only once you know the shape from the inside will you start to notice it in the people that you walk alongside. So there is a workshop coming up in a couple of weeks. This masterclass prepares you. The workshop is the held space, a small group where you'll gently meet your own story with support and time. It's here if you feel called by curiosity to continue exploring. So curiosity is yours to offer now. What you can carry into your work today, curiosity, the shape of a transition, and the noticing. And just gently naming with curiosity, I wonder if. And here's the edge. The moment it stops being information, when someone needs something to shift rather than something to understand cognitively, that's beyond a masterclass. And that's when you refer. You can send them to me or to beba.org, which is Ray Castellino's organization out of Ojai, California. And they have a whole program to support people with birth imprints. And it's mostly for children under about the age of 9. And then there are also different things for adults. If you're interested in that, just reach out to me. So knowing when to refer is not a failure. It is really part of doing this well. This work, Ray Castellino says, takes about 10 years to master. You can start learning to do pieces of it now, but it really is something that you need to embody to really, really get. And no matter where you are, how old you are, how old your clients are, I want you to hold with you that it's never too late. Not at 30, not at 50. The patterns that we carry can be understood and worked with long after they're formed. So where to go from here? Sit with your own story in the Curious Adult Workshop. And if you purchase the Back to Birth for Helping Professionals, you also get the Parent Workshop. So you get the Parent Workshop, the Curious Adult Workshop, so you can look at yourself, Parent Workshop, so that you can see what it looks like when parents are working with their story. And then after those workshops, we'll have a call where you can ask your questions. And when you're ready to go deeper, my 2-year training program is reopening soon. And send me an email at rebecca@thrivinghumans.org, and I'll get you on the list. So thank you so much for being here, for your attention, for your curiosity, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you soon.